Okay, we're going to look at how to start to set up our movie inside of Director, utilizing the stage and the cast and the score, basically our three main components inside of Director. Now, what I've got here is I went ahead and created a graphics internal cast for myself. So I just went to internal tab, right clicked, and went to new cast and just typed in graphics. We'll make another one for, say, audio in this case. Selected internal. You can select to link these from an external cast member, which means they will not be embedded inside of your Director movie, which is going to save some space for you. Or you can select internal, as in this example here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on internal. Another thing about external is you can link that to other movies as well, which we'll get into in later movies. So I'm going to select internal here, go and create. And what happens is it pops up into a tab here inside of your cast. And if you look closely, you'll also see that you have two views here on the top of the director cast. You can view these as a list icon. So I can see the cast number, the type of graphic. This happens to be modifications that I've made. That information comes up here. Or I can just select it by view so I can visually see what I have inside of my cast. And I can also use my drop down menu here to select the particular cast members. I can toggle through my cast members like so. The great thing about this is I can kind of visually see what particularly what I'm working with inside of Director. So it's a quick way to see the functionality of the graphics that I have. So I'm going to switch back to graphics. And what I want to do is start to place these graphics onto the stage. So I'm simply doing a drag and drop onto the stage to get those graphics on there. Now I want to show you something that's important when we drag these items on here is I will eventually apply an animation to some of these graphics. So when I do drag them on, I might want them coming in at different lengths here. So when I click and drag from my cast and pop it onto the stage here, and I've got about a 640 by 480 stage size here, and the graphic fits nicely on there. Notice that up in my score, as we see here, my score is set to expand this out to 30. So what happens is this automatically stretches itself along my time or along my score, so it's 30. Now if I were to play this through, this means that it would be a complete, if I had 30 frames per second, it would be a complete second here in terms of any animation that I apply to it, what have you. This is really a good way to drag in your items because 30 is a good point. I like to visually see them, and that gives me, if you've got any names affixed to it, you can visually see what the names are, which is nice. I can switch this over to member, and I can see precisely what that is. If it was smaller than that, obviously I wouldn't quite see the name there. So that's a nice length to really see what you have in Director. Now, if you do not want that to happen, if you instead wanted maybe a longer length for some of these objects, you were dragging in multiple pieces, and that wasn't going to work for you, you wanted it maybe to reach 60 or maybe be 15, somewhere in there, you can change that under your preferences. And if you go to the File menu, and you actually go down to, actually it might be, yeah, it's going to be under Director menu, under Preferences, and it will fall under your sprite. So if I go to Director, Preferences, and Sprite, and select Sprite, what I am going to see here, and this is where it's important, is I've got a span duration of 30 frames. So what happens when I drag and drop this in, it is going to stretch out for 30 frames. If I did not want that, let's say for instance, if I wanted 1 frame, I would click OK, and I would go back to maybe the City of Henderson badge, drag this in. Notice now it's only 1 frame. So to make those changes, it's under your sprite menu, and you can change that. I'm going to change it back to 30 now because that's what I want. Now, if you've dragged some in like this, and they are not the length that you want, you can go through these and extend these if you want by using your Alt key on the Macintosh. But you can also do it another way, which is quite helpful, and that's through your Property Inspector. So I'm going to jump on down to the Property Inspector here. And notice on my Sprite tab, I've got a start frame and an end frame right here, start and end. I can decide, since this is my COH badge, City of Henderson badge, I can select that to end at 30. And now that will extend as long as the DVD title page. So that's a good way to fix items up there in your cast. And I'm just going to drop the ITT logo in here too and drag these down where I want them. Now, once I do drag them, depending on where I am selected here in my score, you need to be aware of that as well, because if I start dragging in things, let's say I've clicked down here and I start dragging in the badge, I'll notice that it affixes itself down here in the score, and you're going to look here and say, where did my other stuff go? It's vanished. Well, it hasn't vanished. You just need to move your playhead back here, and you'll notice that I've got an additional one, so I'll delete that, and then I can just select this and delete that. It brings me back to where I started. So be aware of where you have selected inside of your score. That is where it's going to place those items. So once you have those affixed, we want to kind of focus on the score now and setting that up. What eventually I'm going to have here are additional sections for myself. So in the next movie, we're going to take a look at how to actually divide this score into some markers, which will in turn help us in our animation and our navigation through the particular movie to have this set up. But what I wanted to focus on right now is getting things from the cast onto your stage and laying them out correctly inside of Director.